safe room. Tiffany and Bob watched the TV screen in horror. The ideal California weather ensued outside, but the TV image was not as inviting. They knew it was going to happen sometime, but they didn't know when. Tiffany, the thin, chemically enhanced blonde of standard beauty, fidgeted with her nails, almost biting them on several occasions. Bob, a fairly fit, brown-haired, self-assured co-Caucasian, sat beside his squeeze. He repeatedly tapped his right index finger on the side of his head, as if sending Morse code. In reality, they were scared. They watched the horror in a living room bigger than most people's houses, in a neighborhood frequented only by the wealthy, in this an exclusive setting devoid of hardship. Now that the riots had come, they thought they would be restricted to the downtown area. No such luck. The riots were now extending into the valley. A local mall had already been trashed. The burning, looting, unyielding anarchy was just a mile from their exclusive home. It was a big one this time. Not only were there hordes of disenfranchised blacks, there were white and Hispanics joining the mob. Perhaps the 20% unemployment rate had something to do with it. Perhaps the don't work, don't eat philosophy of the current administration had pushed the poor to the edge. Perhaps it was just the derailing of the unemployment compensation program or the destruction of minimum wage. Perhaps it was just because the state was bankrupt. Who knows? The mayor kept up a sober face on the screen in front of them. He promised to restore order. With what? Hell, the National Guard had been paid for about a month, being placated with those food giveaways. The police? Shit. They hadn't had a decent paycheck for 10 years, and their number had been cut in half. The federal government? You gotta be kidding. They had 2 other food, race, and poverty riots going on all over. The shit had hit the fan. The 30-something couple watched the destruction in horror. 100 blocks were burning by now. The only thing standing downtown was the municipal complex, and it was holding on tentatively. Freeways were shut down within 50 miles of the city. The airport was closed, and public and private transportation was at a standstill. Bobby turned to Tiffany. He could see the terror in her eyes. Although they had been together for only 3 years, they had a good life together. They had all the comforts of the wealthy, a gigantic home, 3 luxury cars, the best of food, filtered water, swimming pool, sauna, maid service, and more. It looked like most of it would be lost in a day or two. "It's lucky that we planned for such an event," Bobby said half-heartedly, trying to comfort his live-in mate. "You're right, Bob," Tiffany affirmed. "Few have safe rooms." The couple sat fixed on the TV screen for about 1/2 hour more. The disruptions were onto Pandora Street, just 4 blocks away. Bob quietly told Tiffany that it was time to go to the safe room. Bob led the way. He slowly walked in front of Tiffany so as not to alarm her to the seriousness of the situation. "What about my wardrobe?" "That's no problem. There are changes of clothing in the safe room. Besides, we should be in there for only a day or so, until this blows over." Bob's voice was not that convincing at that time. However, Tiffany nodded and made her way to the basement room. Tiffany did regret that it was Maria's day off. She could have gotten her to shuttle some of those precious things to the safe room. The couple walked to the basement. At the end of the basement on the south wall was the bank vault-like door of the safe room. It was tastefully placed behind 2 large paisley curtains. Bob pulled back the curtains with his hands to reveal the door. Bob dialed in 98611 on the entry pad. Huge tumblers moved and large steel bolts retracted in the wall. He then opened the door using the giant steel handle. After the couple was inside, Bob pushed the door shut. As he did, he heard the giant steel rods burrow into the wall. They could only get out of the room by dialing 98611 on the exit pad and turning the huge steel handle. No one could get in. They were safe. The room was quite extensive. It was far more than those fallout shelters of 50 years ago. The room was about 14 by 12 feet. It had many conveniences. There was a TV, radio, CD, and fold-out beds. A giant refrigerator and freezer. Full kitchen, microwave, and sink graced the cooking area. There was a landline telephone system. Additionally, they had cell phones and 5 video monitors used to access the situation inside and outside the house. Ample canned food, clothing, and bottled water was there. The room even had its own water supply for the shower and toilet. The air was filtered by an elaborate system, and the whole electrical system was threefold. Normal current automatic backup generator with its own exhaust in a small room adjacent, and a long-life battery system. The room had more amenities than most of the houses in the world. Bob grabbed an imported beer from the fridge. Tiffany opted for some mineral water. They sat on a nice couch and viewed a somewhat smaller TV with HD TV option. The riot outside was unabated. The flames from the foothills danced sporadically throughout the neighborhood. The looters were making their way up the street in their neighborhood. "We should call the police," Tiffany asserted. The look Bob gave her let her know that such a request was futile. He didn't even have to comment on the request. She knew that help was impossible at this time. They were both learning that there were times when money could not buy security. Bob tried the landline phone. There was nothing. The lines were down. With all this stuff going on, maybe the phone company was burned out. Who knows? Tiffany tried her cell phone. It was not working. They must have disrupted the power to the relay towers. In an exercise of futility, Bob tried his. The same thing. There were no communications possible with the outside world. Tiffany resolved to keep trying the cell phone. "Never give up, never give up, never get up," she whispered to herself. Bob directed his attention to one of the 5 monitors. He could see about 5 people at the main gate. One fellow had a pickaxe and was busting the lock at the gate. The other 4 followed him inside their estate. They were making their way to the front door. "I have a surprise for these scum," Bob remarked. Then he went to a panel on the wall and watched the outside activity from there. The miscreants outside had broken their main entrance door with the axe. The mob proceeded into the house. Bob flipped the switch on the panel on the wall. Tear gas ducts throughout the house emitted the harassing agent. The looters were completely caught off guard. One of the packs had pretty well destroyed the grand piano with his axe prior to being overtaken by the gas. Another, who was micturating in the atrium, exited via the front door without zipping up. In fact, the whole lot of them exited most expeditiously out of the residence. Bob smiled. The couple seemed fixed on the surveillance system monitors. However, it wasn't more than 15 minutes later than another group of looters came in upstairs. Bob smiled at Tiffany and walked triumphantly to the wall panel that released the gas. It was the same story. The looters made a quick exit, doing a lot of damage to the inside of the house. However, the looters stayed outside the house this time. It seemed like they were planning something. That's when they saw what was to come. One of the trespassers, a short, long-haired white man with a beard, threw a Molotov cocktail through a window. The house started to burn. The whole outside gang was jumping up and down in delight. "Nice work, Bob." Tiffany was getting in a dig. "Maybe they would have left us alone if you hadn't gassed them, jerk." Bob had no desire to get in a heated argument in an enclosed space in a traumatic situation such as this, so he remained silent. The place was torched. It went up in less than an hour. Of course, our 2 lovers were safe in the safe room. The regular electrical service went off. The emergency diesel one kicked in. "How long will this work?" Tracy was trying to come back to some form of civility with Bob. "We have enough fuel for 3 weeks. We should be all right." Tiffany and Bob sat on the couch, wrapped in deep thought. It was a hard thing to lose most of your material things. It's even harder when they are such a source of pleasure to you. It was like a nightmare that you couldn't awake from. Meanwhile, all the monitors turned to snow except for the one near the entrance of their property. They could see shadows milling about. The phantoms seemed to be occasionally breaking items in the driveway. If they had had sound, I'm sure they would have heard cursing, laughing, and screams. Screams from those who did not plan. Screams from those without a safe room. The TV went blank. There wasn't a single thing on a single channel. Bob switched to the radio. He found only one station, an emergency broadcast station over in San Dimas. Sounded like a recorded message. They were saying to stay in your homes or basements or a safe place. They would arrive to restore order as soon as possible. It was basically a bend over and kiss your ass goodbye message. The rest of the first evening was spent talking, drinking, and with one attempt for lovemaking solicited by Bob. No good. Tiffany was in no mood. She didn't have a headache, but she sure had other things on her mind then. Things were out of sync, unpredictable. Neither she or Bob were in control. It was a feeling that they had never had. Bob and Tiffany finished up almost half a case before they fell asleep on the couch. The next morning, the couple took a shower together and ate breakfast. Most of the stuff was frozen. It was not too bad. Each had a frozen pancake breakfast with a side glass of reconstituted orange juice. A glance at the clock by the TV revealed that they had slept late. It was 11 a.m. No big deal. For the first time in a long time, they had nowhere to go. They seemed to be in luck. The second day, a TV station was operating, although the signal was poor. It was one of those emergency stations. They were basically saying about the same thing that they heard on the radio the night before. It was like, "Don't call us, we'll call you." They did get to see several still pictures of the destruction. The waterfront particularly seemed like a stockyard refuse dump. The burned-out overhead cranes used to unload the cargo from the ships appeared as monuments for skeletons in a graveyard of black. To compound the horror, the looters had liberated the city jail downtown. Tiffany was getting bored. She had watched 2 DVDs, eaten a light lunch, and seemingly had nothing to do. The worst part of it, she was removed from her routine at the health club, what she wouldn't give to spend half a day chatting with her girlfriends down at Bebop and Bill's. Bob watched the DVD with her, drank a few more beers, and made many trips to the bathroom. Without their material world, they didn't seem to have much in common. Around 4 p.m., the room shook. On top of the riots, they were treated to a 7.9 earthquake. It was so intense that pictures fell off the wall and the refrigerator almost fell over. Bob and Tracy cowered on the couch until the 45-second event was over. Before either could say anything, the lights went out. Somehow the earthquake had disrupted the diesel line. There was no electricity. Bob fumbled for a flashlight, and on the second try found one in a small drawer in the stand by the TV. He made his way to the electrical switch box and switched to backup battery power. The lights returned immediately. "How long will this work?" Tiffany asked with a small hint of horror in her voice. 3 days. It's good for 3 days. Bob sounded excessively loud. It was a ruse to hide his own fears from Tiffany. Bob had some serious reading to do. He broke open the emergency battery power handbook. They would have to conserve just one light on at a time. The TV could only operate for 1 hour a day. The shower could be used only once a day. They would have to take a shower together. The refrigerator could only be opened 5 times a day. The toilet flushed only twice a day. These sacrifices would assure the couple of 3 days of electrical power. It was a hard pill to swallow for both of them. Neither had had to sacrifice anything in their entire lives. They were offsprings of wealth and the children of excess. To compound the difficulties, a small leak had started in the ceiling above the bathroom. This leak was really a drip. Bob put a bucket underneath the leak that was near the commode. About every 4 hours he had to dump the bucket in the bathtub. It was just an added minor aggravation. The second day of battery power was uneventful. Neither the TV nor the radio could convey positive information about the conditions outside the safe room. Pandemonium ensued. Safety had not been restored. They heard that the president was aware of the situation, and help was on the way. He had made the taped, carefully worded speech somewhere in Virginia in an underground bunker. The captives even scrimped on energy for food preparation. Meals were protein bars with nutritional supplement drinks. Neither complained. That evening, Bob and Tiffany talked about their trip to the Caribbean. That was about a month ago. They had spent the entire month island hopping, drinking, making love on sandy beaches. It was a break from their daily lives that they really enjoyed. They shared a few laughs. They decided to watch a 1-hour DVD. Before the show was over, both fell asleep on the couch. They seemed to cuddle closer that night than in a long